BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. BlackBoxNed88 on Instagram for the bonus podcast. And just a quick reminder, every Monday is Zodiac Mondays. Wednesday is an Ask Me Anything. That's an AMA, so please drop your questions below for things that you would like discussed here on the show. And Friday is an Anything Goes. Any subject is fair game, mostly talking about true crime, serial killers, the Zodiac Killer, but any subject is welcome. All right, so please share some ideas in the comment section about what you would like to hear about on this channel, and let's get started. Okay, hello everybody. Today is Monday, another Zodiac Monday. Welcome to the show. Today we're going to be doing the episode in a different way, instead of just exploring somebody's theory about the Zodiac Killer, or even some details in the Zodiac Killer mystery. This is going to continue from Friday's Anything Goes segment, which was on the murder of Long Liz Stride from 1888, one of the alleged Jack the Ripper victims. And I was asking you guys, would you want to hear a comparison between the Zodiac Killer and Jack the Ripper? And I don't think that this is simply for the sake of discussion, or it's not just simply to highlight some of the similarities and differences between the two serial killers. I think that there is a very important reason to do this, which I will say later on in the episode. But that's the way I want to approach this one. At first I was going to list all of the similarities between the Zodiac Killer, who operated in 68 and 69, and Jack the Ripper, who operated in 1888. First I was going to list the similarities and then list the differences, but then I thought that it might be a little bit more beneficial to just have it all intertwined into one and moving on in a continuous discussion, if you will. So things are going to be kind of going up and down all over the map, going back to the 1800s and then forward to the 1960s and so on. And because this isn't exactly looking at the genuine connections, I did want to do some of that, though, because on that episode, The Murder of Long Liz Stride, that was put out on Friday, which you can listen to here on this channel, I would like to read a comment that was left there by Richard Grinnell, who says, "The first time it could be argued that the Zodiac Killer imitated Jack the Ripper in any communication was the April 24th, 1978 letter, where the Zodiac Killer, or copycat, signed off yours truly at the foot of the correspondence placed midsection across the page. Exactly like the infamous Dear Boss letter. He did use yours truly in the Exorcist letter, but at the beginning, the Zodiac would repeat this in October of 1987, on the 28th of that month, signing yours truly at the foot of the letter, just like the 1978 letter." And when it says "or copycat," the 1978 letter is one that is not accepted as an authentic Zodiac communication by everybody. Some people believe that it was a forgery. Many people actually believe that the Zodiac letter stopped in 1974 with the Exorcist letter that Richard cited there as well. And back to his comment, there was extensive coverage of the Yorkshire Ripper in 1978 that may have triggered the yours truly signature in the 1978 letter with the Jack the Ripper. We know that the Zodiac Killer was an avid reader of newspapers and was not adverse to Britishisms. On January 21st, 1978, the Yorkshire Ripper claimed his seventh victim, that of Yvonne Pearson, age 21. Peter Sutcliffe repeatedly bludgeoned her about the head with a hammer, then jumped on her chest before stuffing horsehair into her mouth from a discarded sofa under which he hid her body near Lum Lane. It sounds like an absolutely despicable crime. There's some evil people in the world. On January 18th, 1978, Helen Ritka, age 18, was struck on the head 5 times as she exited a vehicle. After stripping many of the clothes from her body, he then repeatedly stabbed her in the chest. Her body was found beneath the railway arches in a timber yard and was driven down 3 days later. The body of Yvonne Pearson was not discovered and reported until March 26, 1978. 1 month later, the Zodiac Killer reappeared and wrote to the San Francisco Chronicle in a communication bearing hallmarks of the Dear Boss letter of 1888. Did the Zodiac Killer keep abreast of the news from England and resurrect the Ripper for the newsrooms of the San Francisco Chronicle, or was there another reason why he resurfaced in April of 1978? I mean, I can tell you a couple theories that some people have about the 1978 letter. One is that it was written by Robert Graysmith himself, the author of the book Zodiac in 1986, because originally Graysmith wanted his book to come out earlier under the title This is the Zodiac Speaking, and some people think that he is the actual author of that. Just to reignite a little bit of Zodiac publicity in the papers a year or two prior to the publication of his book in 1981, that's when it was scheduled to come out with the publisher W. Norton, but they pulled it at the last second. Another theory is that the 1978 letter is a forgery that is written by the detective Dave Toschi himself. So there are some points up and down about that. And just a response to Richard's comment comes to us from Tube Sleuth, who says, "Sir, I think you might be incorrect. Metaphorically speaking, the Zodiac killer made comparisons to Jack the Ripper in the confession mailed in Riverside, that's in 1966, but I shall cut off her female parts and deposit them for all the city to see. Jack the Ripper did the same to one of his victims." The only issue with that is that's 1966, the murder of Sherry Jo Bates, which is an unconfirmed Zodiac incident. I personally don't believe the Zodiac killer murdered Sherry Jo Bates, and some people think that, okay, the Zodiac didn't commit that crime, but he wrote the letters for it. A younger, inexperienced Zodiac, if you will, someone who wanted to just test the waters a little bit about what would happen if he mailed in these letters saying, Bates had to die, there will be more, as well as the Riverside confession, which Tube Sleuth was citing. Okay, these were, I wanted to read these comments off first because they are actually about genuine Jack the Ripper Zodiac connections in which the Zodiac killer would have directly referenced the Ripper as opposed to simply learning about the case or having the Ripper as an influence. But through this recording, we will really look at the similarities and differences between the Zodiac and Jack the Ripper. And as I said on Friday, I'm an absolute newcomer to the Jack the Ripper mystery. 100%. I was not even familiar with all the victims' names last week, so I will mostly look at this with a Zodiac type of lens on. And if I misspeak or I misstate anything, or if I get anything wrong at all, please correct me in the comment section. I'm always open to correction. And the most important thing is to get the narrative right as possible. But I wanted to go over to none other than the Encyclopedia, that's the Britannica, to get an introduction on Jack the Ripper, being that I am a novice to this material. So let's just read their simple introduction. Some dozen murders between 1888 and 1892 have been speculatively attributed to Jack the Ripper, but 5 are considered canonical. Mary Ann Nichols, found on August 31st, Annie Chapman, found on September 8th, Elizabeth Stride, found on September 30th, Catherine Eddowes, found on September 30th, and Mary Jane Kelly, found on November 9th. I mean, even just reading that off there, you can see the close concentration of activity surrounding the Ripper. Horribly abnormal for serial killers, unless there is a very, very specific motivation about why they would want to commit a set of crimes like that. So, I mean, firstly, thank you to everyone who tried to correct my pronunciation of Catherine Eddowes' name, because on the Friday's episode, I was calling her Kate Edowes, but someone gave me the suggestion. It's like Ed owes you money. If you loan $5 to Ed, Ed owes you $5. And someone also said Eddowes, it rhymes with meadows. Here is an absolute red flag about a difference between Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer. Look at some of these dates right here. Elizabeth Stride was found on September 30th. Catherine Eddowes found on September 30th. 2 crimes committed in the same night. It's possible that both of those murders occurred even within the same hour. And the Zodiac Killer definitely did not operate like that. And I was so focused on the time frame during the episode on the murder of Long Liz Stride that I also overlooked something, that even in the Ripper's confession to this, alleged Ripper confession that is, that this means something that is quite different about Jack the Ripper compared to the Zodiac Killer. The Ripper was about the mutilations. he had already murdered Elizabeth Stride, if he did indeed commit that crime. I mean, that's one where some people think maybe is someone taking credit for a murder that he didn't commit to confuse the authorities, or to just be more braggadocious, or to just instill fear and terror to the public. But if that was genuine Ripper activity, to go and find another victim, well, what was the motivation? To mutilate the body, to target Catherine Eddowes, to not only commit the murder, but also the mutilation. With the Zodiac killer, other than the Lake Berryessa stabbing on September 27th of 1969, the other victims were killed by gunshot. As I said, Sherry Jo Bates is not a canonical Zodiac victim, and the canonical Zodiac crimes go from 1968 to 1969. It's really over a period of just south of 10 months. Whereas the Ripper's victims, look at this, the first one is found on October 31st, and the final one is found on November 9th. That's not even 4 months. Really, it's about 2.5. And not even the Zodiac killer, but the Phantom killer from Texarkana in 1946 bears a very similar hallmark. The killings are done over a span of 4 months, but it's not the entirety of the 4-month period. It's not like 120 days. It starts in February of 1946, and it goes only to May 3rd of 1946. This is the Phantom Killer, the Texarkana Moonlight Murders. So in that instance, that's even more similar to Jack the Ripper. Also, a big similarity between the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer is both of them only operated in the summer and the fall, August 31st to November 9th. That's in the summer and the fall. The Zodiac Killer had one crime in December before the winter solstice, which is still the fall. Then Blue Rock Springs was on the 4th of July, 1969. Lake Berryessa was on September 27th. The Paul Stein murder was on October 11th. All of those are either in the summer and the fall. And with the Moonlight murders of 1946, those are all in the winter or the spring. It's like maybe the Phantom Killer was trying to be the opposite of Jack the Ripper, or to complete the circle, or in some ways, or just to commit something that is off by some type of calendar reason. But that's all very alleged. What I also notice here, just by reading off this very simple introduction, and people can add in things if they want in the comments section, the Ripper's canonical crimes are occurring in 1888, right? And then the unconfirmed Jack the Ripper crimes are moving forward and up to 1892. With the Zodiac Killer, the unconfirmed crime sprees go all across the 20th century. I mean, even back to 1946, there are people out there, such as David Gold, who wrote the book My Dance with the Zodiac Killer, who believes that the Zodiac Killer was the Phantom Killer from 1946. But look at some other ones that have a higher likelihood of being true. The murder of Ray Davis in 1962, the Domingos Edwards murders of 1963, the Swindle murders of 1964, the murder of Sherry Jo Bates in 1966, and then after the canonical Zodiac crimes in 1968 and 1969, there's the disappearance of Donna Lass, the Santa Rosa hitchhiker slayings, and it goes on and on all the way up until the 1980s with the murder of Joan Webster, as well as the Sacramento Freeway murders. I don't believe that the Zodiac Killer did any of those, mind you. I am not convinced that the Zodiac Killer ever operated outside of the 5 canonical crimes, and there are several reasons for it. I do think it's an insightful statement, though, from Tube Sleuth, who pointed out that in the Riverside Confession, there is something about depositing her female parts for the whole world to see. That could be paying homage to Jack the Ripper. But I've said very clearly, I believe the Zodiac Killer studied Jack the Ripper, the Moonlight murders, as well as the murder of Sherry Jo Bates. So whoever was responsible for the crimes of 1968 and 1969, then they almost would have had intense familiarity with all of these things. So I believe, we don't know who the Zodiac Killer was. But let's look here at the mutilations of Jack the Ripper. Let's just read a little bit more in this Britannica article. On one occasion, half of a human kidney, which may have been extracted from a murder victim, was mailed to the police. Yeah, the Zodiac Killer didn't do anything like that I can think of. The authorities also received a series of taunting notes from a person calling himself Jack the Ripper and purporting to be the murderer. The Zodiac killer did not operate like this, though. I mean, okay, yes, of course, the Zodiac didn't remove anybody's kidney. The Zodiac also barely touched the victims. It really is quite astonishing for someone who is a serial killer to just really lack that type of criminal intimacy. And that's why a lot of people believe that, well, I was about to say some things about the multiple killers theory, the group murder theory, the Zodiac hoax theory, some of those pathways. But that's why people do examine that, because there is a lack of criminal intimacy. Whereas the murder of Sherry Jo Bates that took place in 1966, she is stabbed numerous times. I mean, she is slashed across the face. She's pulling out pieces of the perpetrator's hair. That is a very rough, passionate, I mean, it's a very intimate crime. That person is getting up close and physical with Sherry Jo Bates. And the Zodiac primarily did not do that. At the Lake Herman Road murders on December 20th of 1968, someone, or maybe two people, pulled up to David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen's car, fired some bullets, and disappeared into the night. With the Blue Rock Springs shooting on July 4th of 1969, someone pulled up to Mike Migeau and Darlene Ferrin, fired some bullets, and disappeared into the night. And with Lake Berryessa, there is a little bit more intimacy there. By intimacy, I just mean close contact, physicality, because at Lake Berryessa, the victims are stabbed. They are tied up, and the perpetrator is wearing the hood, having a long conversation. The people who believe that there is one criminal who is responsible for all the crimes in 68 and 69 say that, number one, he wanted to show criminal versatility. Number two, he wanted to possibly recreate scenes from literature and comic books and the operetta The Mikado, and there's a reason why these crimes were committed in these particular ways, let alone mathematics. I mean, that there are mathematical signatures. There's a reason why the symbols are done in the way. There's a reason why the perpetrator stabbed the victims with a knife at Lake Berryessa and not at Blue Rock Springs and the Paul Stein murder, that one too, but also at Lake Herman Road. There could be hidden reasons for this, but the Zodiac killer is certainly not about doing things to the victims post-mortem. The Ripper has a very big difference there, and if it is true that the same person murdered Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes on the same night, that person really wanted to make a statement about the mutilations. And from some of the other material that has been shared with me, mostly via Jerry B. Thank you for all the things that you wrote for the episode on Long Liz Stride. There are some theories that involve the royal family, the Masons. There are reasons why these women are being targeted, and there are reasons why they are being mutilated, and it is about leaving signatures. But Jerry openly said that that is something that is not a lot of people are going to want to hear that, but I absolutely do. I want to discuss different theories and hear what people have to say. Now, about the letters, there is something else that I noticed that is a striking similarity between Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer. And I found it just on jacktheripper.org. I'm not sure the person who wrote this out, but it seems that there isn't a confession that comes immediately after the first murder. I mean, after the Lake Herman Road murders, the Zodiac Killer didn't say anything for 7 months. It's not until after the Blue Rock Springs shooting on July 4th of 1969. But with the Ripper murders, like, he doesn't commit a crime on the 30th or 31st of August 1888, Jack the Ripper's in the 1800s, of course, 1888, and then sign Jack the Ripper. Not every letter or correspondence that the Ripper wrote in appears to have been signed that way, so they don't identify themselves by the pseudonym or the moniker until later on in the crime spree. I don't really know what it is about serial killer psychology. It really is somewhat of a mystery that somebody would only operate in such a small window. Someone would only operate in just a span of a few months. That's why a lot of people think with the Ripper that there is there is this ulterior motive for somebody committing the crimes. And since I've been reading up on Jack the Ripper, I've noticed every theory under the sun. Some people think that there was indeed a real Ripper and that he committed all these crimes. One person committed those 5 canonical Ripper murders, but then other people wrote the letters for it, and it could have been a team effort, or it could be someone who was latching on to things. There could be all kinds of motivations, but that would be the heart and soul of their claim. There is a Ripper, and there is a letter writer, so that's 2 people. Other people think the Ripper and the letter writer are one and the same, that's 1 person. Or I could pick up my copy of the book, The Myth of the Zodiac Killer, again, and talk about how there's that sentence in there that says, those Jack the Ripper letters are commonly considered hoaxes. And I think I said something about that in the episode on Friday when I was like, are the letters of Jack the Ripper commonly considered hoaxes? I'm like, yeah, right. How common is that? Then I just put Jack the Ripper into Google earlier today, and what happened? Well, one of the first things that came up was, oh yeah, many people think the Ripper letters are hoaxes, and it was from the BBC website actually, and I was like, huh, okay, I guess they do. That theory is out there. But I would like to go over to that part of jacktheripper.org, and I would like to read the article here. There isn't a name on this exact one, but it might be written by Richard Jones. He is the site author, so maybe this one's also a tribute to him. If it is, thank you, Richard Jones. And this says, Jack the Ripper, the letters. One of the more bizarre aspects of the Jack the Ripper case is the number of letters that the police, newspapers, authorities, and notable citizens received from anonymous members of the public, either offering information on the best way to apprehend the killer or else purporting to come from the murderer himself. How many letters were there? With the passage of over 100 years since the Whitechapel murders, it's very difficult to put an exact figure on the number of letters written by Jack the Ripper that were sent by ordinary men, women, who found the allure of the murderers difficult to resist, and who were egged on by the huge amount of publicity being generated from the crimes. They developed an irresistible urge to inject themselves into the police investigation, either by offering advice on how the miscreant could be brought to justice, or else taunting the police by claiming to be the killer and telling them where he was going to strike next and what he would do to his next victim. On October 20th, 1888, the Illustrated Police News reported that the police had looked into the provenance of over 700 letters. These can, of course, be broken down into the letters that were offering suggestions as to how the murderer might be apprehended, or even information that might have been intended to actually help the police bring the killer to justice. I think that a lot of, well, actually, I mean, it's not even my theory. Some people believe that the perpetrator in the Jack the Ripper mystery would have mailed in that half-kidney to show, hey, I'm not one of these hoaxers out there. This is actually me. With the Zodiac Killer, there's something similar. After the murder of Paul Stein on October 11th of 1969, a piece of Paul Stein's bloody shirt is mailed in. This was done in more than one correspondence that the Zodiac Killer mailed in. So that is also something that is similar. And when I read off the, it was actually the audio clip that I played. It was from Nina Soren's channel, who was talking about, like, it's a dramatic performance where 2 people are playing the Ripper victims. One is playing Liz Stride, and the other is playing Catherine Eddowes. And she also said that part of Catherine Eddowes' skirt was cut and taken and removed. Well, I mean, that sounds exactly like what the Zodiac Killer did after the Stein shooting in '69. But it's the same motivation. I mean, that is something that is widely discussed. Some people even believe that the Lake Berryessa stabbing on September 27th of 1969 was not genuine Zodiac activity. So the reason that someone committed the Stein shooting was to show that, number one, he wants to continue the crime spree a little bit more, but the second reason is to steal a piece of Paul Stein's shirt, mail that in saying, hey, look, some people out there are trying to, as this article said, inject themselves into the case. Well, this is actually me who committed the Stein shooting. I am the murderer of the taxi driver. But, well, I was going to go off on a giant tangent about a very particular detail, but that will have to wait. So, it really is quite odd about how there are all of these similarities and differences between the Ripper and the Zodiac, and the only explanation that I can truly provide is it seems like the Zodiac Killer was very familiar with Jack the Ripper. Would he have actually been trying to recreate the Ripper in the 20th century? I would have to say no. I would expect that the Zodiac Killer wanted to create his own version of it because of the lack of criminal intimacy. The Zodiac Killer had the victims tied up at Lake Berryessa, and he could have mutilated them in a much more heinous and gruesome fashion. Why didn't he do that? Well, some people believe that the number of stab wounds at Lake Berryessa might have its own mathematical significance. I would encourage you to look at Gareth Penn's writings on that, as well as Ray Grant's. But other people believe that the Zodiac Killer was just trying to create a new chapter in the book. Like, it's just a different act in the play. And as we said, showing criminal versatility. But I was, well, one time I brought up the quotation from the show Clarice, which is available on Paramount Plus, and it's a fictional show, and it deals with a fictional murder story. But there's one line in there where the psychological profiler says, "He's so cold, but he wants us to think that he's on fire." And you could apply that to both Jack the Ripper or the Zodiac Killer, based on how the canonical crimes in both of these function. Where is there someone who is just unleashing this type of rage that they're so infuriated with women, and in the Zodiac Killer's case, men? I mean, we haven't even talked about that, but that they have to commit these crimes, or there's this urge that they just cannot break, or is it all done in a predetermined, calculated, cold and methodical way? He's so cold, but he wants us to think that he's on fire. Well, I'm going to go back to this article from the jacktheripper.org site that says, on the 24th of September, the closing day for the inquest after the death of Annie Chapman, an unknown author sent a letter to Sir Charles Warren, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner. There is nothing that suggests the police actually took this missive seriously. M-I-S-S-I-V-E, new word for me. Indeed, crank letters were common with high-profile cases that had received extensive press coverage. The significance of this letter, however, is that it was a precursor to hundreds of such letters that would bring the police investigation into the Jack the Ripper murders close to a meltdown. The letter bore a London S.E. postmark which was headed on Her Majesty's service. It read, "Dear Sir, I do not wish to give myself up. I am in misery with nightmare. I am the man who committed all these murders in the last 6 months. I am a horse slaughterer. I have found the woman I wanted, that is Chapman, and I have done what I called slaughter, but if anyone comes, I will surrender." Okay, about this angle of someone being a horse slaughterer, I know this isn't really the exact focus of the article, just reading off, but in some Jack the Ripper theories, even an outsider like me is fully aware that a lot of people believe that he was a butcher. There's a real Jack the Ripper, there's a real letter writer, but he was a butcher. I mean, butchers often become the targets of a lot of heinous true crime murder theories, for lack of a better term, because they are very familiar with blood, they're very familiar with how to use a knife. And, okay, that's one thing. There's also the some of the other suspects that I just listed off last time. I said the ones I can just name off the top of my head: the Polish immigrant, the silversmith, the elephant man. Oh, and I was watching this video on YouTube, and the title of the channel has just escaped me. I was watching that rather early today, and they said that Lewis Carroll, the writer, was is even an alternative suspect in Jack the Ripper. This is from Fascinating Horror, was the name of that channel. But the Polish immigrant, I want to say his name was Aaron Kaminsky. I probably should Google that real soon. That was about 7 years ago when that wasn't just goofing around on the internet. That was like international news that people were claiming that they had obtained DNA from the Ripper case that was going to point back to that guy who was a barber. And some people in the comment section on that episode from Fantastic Horror were even saying that barbers were very well trained in surgery in the 1800s. And then other people are responding saying, no, 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 that is well over 100 years before that. There was a law that was passed in 1800 in England that prevented it prevented someone with the education level of a barber to commit surgical or to perform surgical practices. In short, that was not the case in 1888. Long story short, that a barber was not a surgeon. But I said it was international news because a lot of sites were putting out things about how there was going to be some new breakthrough in the Jack the Ripper case, but it still appears that that it was not solved, and Kaminsky was definitely not named as the Ripper to everyone's satisfaction. I think he was only 23 years old at the time, and they also were quite surprised that it would be someone so young. But in regards to other suspects, another theory that I had heard of that isn't really, I don't even know if it has the most credibility, is that Jack the Ripper was a woman, Jill the Ripper. Why do they call her that, Jill the Ripper? Shouldn't it just be Jackie the Ripper? I guess Jackie could be masculine or feminine. But the Jill the Ripper theory, and that the perpetrator was actually a midwife, someone who could move around the city with blood on her clothes and no one would notice. I mean, I also think that that goes mostly against the psychological profiling associated with, well, these like types of very rough, intense mutilations. And I think that definitely, I don't think there was any female perpetrator in the Zodiac killer mystery. So, long story short, to wrap up this first segment, is that the big similarities is you have serial killers who are committing crimes, writing letters that are mailed in as these types of taunts. There is this element of bragging, but it's also coming from a place of methodology rather than just someone who is out of control. The other points are that there are 5 canonical crimes in both Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer, but there are always going to be speculative additional crimes that people are going to try and associate. Both of them mailed in a piece of something bloody to show that they had actually committed the crime, and both of them seem to have operated in a time span of less than a year. I mean, that's a similarity and a difference, because the Zodiac Killer's crimes are just short of 10 months, whereas Jack the Ripper's are just short of 3 months of activity. So it really is quite shocking. All right, well, we'll be right back right after this message, so please stay tuned. Bum ba bum 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 ba bum 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 ba bum bum bum. At this time, I would like to talk about some of the ways in which you can help Black Box Online Radio. This channel relies on your support, and the best way you can help out is just by listening to some more content. If you like what you hear, you can hit that like button, subscribe, and share with your friends on social media. But I should also say that Black Box Online Radio now has a Teespring page, and there will be some links in the description box. Please feel free to check out some of the merchandise that is available. Almost all sizes and colors are listed. So, you can also help out by going over to the Zodiac Killer channel and watching the documentary series Obsession into Darkness, parts 1, 2, and 3. I was one of the contributors for that, and you can see some other great Zodiac content on the Zodiac Killer channel. And yes, there will be a part 4 of Obsession into Darkness at some point in the future. And for now, let's get back to the show. Okay, hello, and we are back. Before we begin to restart the discussion, I want to ask you guys, would you like to hear a full episode on the Jack the Ripper hoax theory? As I mentioned in part 1, there is this idea out there that the letters that connected the canonical Ripper crimes were hoaxes, or various aspects of that. You might even go as far to say is that there wasn't a single Jack the Ripper, or maybe there's another variant of the theory. Would you want to hear a full episode on that? And there's another reason that I propose this one, because if you go to this channel, you can find a couple playlists on the Great Zodiac Killer Hoax of 1986, The Myth of the Zodiac Killer, and Zodiac Killer Hoax Theory, open discussion. There are 3 playlists that you can follow if you're curious about the Zodiac hoax theory. I've talked a lot about that one. So, as someone who is once again approaching the Ripper crimes as an outsider, I think it could make for some type of an interesting discussion, the Jack the Ripper hoax theory. But what do you think? If people also have their other ideas for future episodes that they would like covered here on the channel, they can put those in the comment section below as well. So any subject that you want to discuss is also fair game. To get back to the comparing and contrasting between Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer, I touched upon it just a little bit in the early segment, and that is that the gender of the victims in the 5 canonical crimes for the Ripper are all female. The genders of the victims in the Zodiac crimes, both men and women. And there also is not exactly an abnormality in the age range, but with the Zodiac victims, the youngest one is Betty Lou Jensen, who was 16 years old at the time, and David Faraday, whom she was with when she was murdered at Lake Herman Road in December of 1969, was also a male. I mean, he was also a teenager. Of course, he was a male. He was also a teenager, is what I meant to say. They were 16 and 17. The oldest Zodiac Killer victim is Paul Stein, who was 29 years old in 1969. That's not the most shocking, but I was quite surprised about that the concentration of victims in the Zodiac crimes are in the high school and college age. I mean, college age because Cecilia Shepard was 22 when she was murdered at Lake Berryessa. Darlene Ferrin was around a similar age. Cecilia Shepard, I believe, was a music student at La Sierra University, and Darlene Ferrin, of course, was a server at Terry's restaurant. But with the Ripper victims, not only are they all female, that's the 5 canonical crimes, they're also all sex workers. And because I did the episode on Long Liz Stride, I can definitely share with you that she wasn't only a prostitute. She definitely started prostitution at an early age in her life. Because Long Liz Stride was in her mid-40s. I think she was 44 when she was murdered in 1888, just a couple weeks shy of her 45th birthday. But she had started that back when she lived in Sweden, because the other abnormality about her is that she didn't become a prostitute because of the poverty of England. This was something that she had started back in Sweden, makes her way to England, learns both the English language and the Yiddish language. But she also married someone whose last name was Stride. That's how she got it. And they opened a coffee shop, and they ran that as a business for a while. So not exclusively into career sex work, but a lot of people really want to point that out about the Zodiac Killer, that the Zodiac is not like many of the other American serial killers that targeted prostitutes, and some people might come to mind, such as maybe Gary Ridgway, Michael Ross, Robert Christian Hansen. They target sex workers because it's easy to lure them to a vulnerable place, but it's also about taking out animosity against women most of the time. And the Freudian psychologists think that this is because someone has a very intense hatred of their mother, or just a bad relationship with their mother. It doesn't necessarily have to be hatred. It could also be disrespect, lack of bonding. Something has triggered those types of feelings toward women. So they find someone who's a sex worker, whom they also believe in the Freudian sense has been degraded through sexuality, but I don't really think that. That's more what other people put out. And they lure this person to a secluded area, and they murder her. Well, with the Ripper victims, this is all happening in, it seems like, fairly well-crowded areas, because one of the theories with the murder of Liz Stride about why her body was not mutilated like the other Ripper victims is the Ripper is perhaps spending a very large amount of time with Liz Stride throughout the evening, and then he is attempting to murder her, but she either was making lots of noise, or perhaps the sound of a pony and cart was coming by, and he got very startled, so her throat was slit, but then the Ripper is hiding in what is more or less described as a yard, and then someone sees Liz Stride's body and then goes to alert some type of help, and at that moment then the Ripper could escape from that yard where he was hiding. All right, so you can see how um, that is the explanation, but that's still a crowded area. I mean, the crime was interrupted, so within 1 hour he had to go find Kate Eddowes. And with the Zodiac crimes, absolutely not like that at all. Not at all. Lake Herman Road was a very secluded area where the first canonical Zodiac crime took place. I mean, the car was found by itself where David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen were shot. Some people either think that the killer at Lake Herman Road was following the victims and was just waiting for them to pull over to the side of the road at some place. Other people think that there was a prearranged meeting between David Faraday and someone whom he was supposed to get into a fist fight with. Other people think that that David may have pulled over into that parking lot at Lake Herman Road because he wanted to have a conversation with Betty Lou to ask her to be his steady girlfriend. And it also had another piece of significance because David may have provided information to the police that would have caused a drug bust, and he wanted to see if there were going to be any police cars going by at that time, so that's why they're sitting in the car, and he's just talking to Betty Lou, and then the Zodiac killer comes along, fires some gunshots at them, and disappears. Blue Rock Springs is actually much closer to a main road than I would have expected. When you hear that it's taking place in a park, that's nothing like Lake Herman Road. Lake Herman Road is the entrance to a water pumping station. It even has like this fenced off area that's barring the water pumping station from the general public. It's like a private access road, so you can't enter into it. When you hear Blue Rock Springs Park, you think of a very large area, but it's actually the area where Darlene Ferrin's car was parked on the 4th of July, 1969, is much closer to a main road than I would have expected. However, not a lot of people around there, and it's not until 12:10 a.m. that someone calls in Darlene Ferrin's murder, and I believe she's still alive at the time, but she doesn't pass away completely until she arrives at the hospital at 12:38 a.m. But the whole point is they were probably shot around 11:53 to 11:55 p.m. on July 4th, and she passes away on July 5th. So that also shows you that that one was not a whole lot of opportunity to be interrupted. Lake Berryessa, very secluded. Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were allegedly the only people around during that time in which they were interrupted by the Zodiac killer and that they were tied up and stabbed. The Paul Stein murder is one that does break from that pattern once again. And Paul Stein was murdered in Presidio Heights, San Francisco. He was the taxi driver who was shot, not in the back of the head. He was shot right near his right ear. And then the Zodiac killer exited the taxi cab after taking Paul Stein's keys and wallet, and then he exited out into the night. I've said it's possible that the Zodiac killer was trying to make a grand exit. It's like the conclusion of a story. As we said, each crime in the Zodiac killer setup could be a chapter in a book or an act in a play, or because the Zodiac killer could have been heavily inspired by Gilbert and Sullivan's The Mikado, and just like that, 4 acts in a play, 4 acts in some type of a theatrical event, and the Zodiac killer is walking away, making a grand exit. The Paul Stein murder was intended to be a finale, but also taking the keys and the wallet makes it look like it was a taxi cab robbery gone wrong. If someone were to show up there, they might think that, oh, this was a taxi cab robbery gone wrong. I don't know how anyone would suspect the Zodiac killer of that without additional information. I mean, because previously, in the 4 canonical crimes that the Zodiac took place, 5 canonical victims, 4 canonical crimes, the Zodiac was targeting couples who were in cars. And I guess we can go ahead and say some of those things now. The connection to cars is what I've been talking about a lot recently in the Zodiac killer mystery. Some people think that the Zodiac must have been a mechanic, or maybe a mechanical engineer who was the head of an automobile association. I mean, I'm sure someone comes to mind when you can think of that. Or perhaps even a car import-export guy. Someone else should come to mind. But the connection to cars is one of the few things that unites all of the Zodiac killer crimes. The way in Jack the Ripper's preying on sex workers. The Zodiac seems to have this fascination with automobiles, where they're just always present. I mean, even at Lake Berryessa, when the Zodiac killer is wearing a hood, he is approaching two people who are about 500 yards from their car at Lake Berryessa. But he goes back and he writes a message on Brian Hartnell's Carmen Ghia car door. And he does that completely gratuitously. There's no reason to do that. The victims have been attacked and stabbed. It has no connection to the murder, yet he still wanted to have some type of connection to automobiles. I mean, some people think that it's very significant. Other people would probably dismiss that and be like, so what? I mean, like, okay, well, people need cars to go places. But the thing that I said I wanted to talk about is, I've heard Mark Hewitt explain this before, perhaps better than I can. The Zodiac crimes get closer and closer together in terms of activity. Is it possible that somebody was growing in confidence? And if you include the murder of Sherry Jo Bates, which he does in his theory, even though I don't believe that it's genuine Zodiac activity, 2 years from Sherry Jo Bates to Lake Herman Road, 7 months from Lake Herman Road to Blue Rock Springs on the 4th of July, 2 months from Blue Rock Springs to Lake Berryessa, and then 2 weeks from Lake Berryessa to the Paul Stein murder in Presidio Heights. Gareth Penn took this a step further in his book Time 17 when he talked about how the Zodiac killer may have murdered Joan Webster in 1981. Joan Webster was abducted from Logan Airport in Boston, Massachusetts. She was traveling because of Thanksgiving break, and the district attorney's office in Massachusetts definitely did not think the Zodiac killer had anything to do with it. They put their theory forward that someone was operating a black taxi or an illegal taxi, and they lured Joan Webster to a boat and sexually assaulted her and murdered her on that boat. That almost certainly did not happen. In short, they pretty much lied through their teeth. There's also a playlist about the murder of Joan Webster here on this channel. The next point, though, is that Gareth Penn's theory, this whole thing that I've been trying to get to for 5 minutes now, is that it almost seems like he put forward the claim that the Zodiac killer wanted to commit a murder and hide the victim, to hide the final victim, that Joan Webster was intended to be the final Zodiac killer victim, and the assailant wanted to hide her body. I mean, he says something quite clear about that in his book Time 17, which was read off in one of the Joan Webster episodes here on this channel. But the only thing I can say that has going for it is, not only is there this growing in confidence and getting closer and closer together, but also there is this taking control of the automobile, for lack of a better term. Okay, the Zodiac killer sneaks up on 2 people at Lake Herman Road, fires some gunshots, disappears. The Zodiac sneaks up on 2 people at Blue Rock Springs, fires some gunshots, disappears. The Zodiac killer approaches 2 people at Lake Berryessa wearing a hooded costume and stabs them, closer to the victims, but still quite far from the car, but still writes the message on the car door. Then the Zodiac killer murders Paul Stein in Presidio Heights, gets very close and personal with the victim, moving Paul Stein's body around in the taxicab, maybe the only time that the Zodiac killer actually moved a body, and then is taking the keys, taking the wallet, and then walking out. But prior to the murder, the Zodiac is riding in the car with Paul Stein. Paul Stein is the driver, the Zodiac is the passenger, and it doesn't take an outrageous stretch of the mind to think that, okay, with the murder of Joan Webster, the Zodiac is now driving the car. He murdered the taxi driver in San Francisco, now driving the taxi that picks up this unsuspecting individual from the airport, murders her, and then buries the body, and as Gareth Penn was alluding to, adding an additional layer of criminal versatility to the situation. The only problem with that is it really seems like all the evidence is pointing away from the Zodiac killer in the Joan Webster mystery, and there could have been a police cover-up that someone who was a member of law enforcement, I won't even say who in this episode, but he was covering up someone else's illegal activities surrounding the murder of Joan Webster. But then, I mean, if you're going to add a layer of criminal versatility, that can also work to your disadvantage, because then you have to explain, well, then why is there this enormous breaking of the pattern? Here's a similarity between the Zodiac Killer and Jack the Ripper. While the Ripper victims were mutilated, to the best of my knowledge, none of them were buried in the ground, and Joan Webster's body was put into a trash bag, her clothes had been stripped off, and she was buried in the ground on a place near Chabaco Road in Massachusetts. But that is a similarity between the 5 canonical Ripper crimes and the 5 canonical Zodiac victims. The Zodiac had 4 major canonical crimes. But see, that's the thing with the Zodiac, targeting couples. The Ripper isn't doing that. The Ripper is targeting women who are by themselves. So some people think that the Zodiac Killer was a gay man, and that he was targeting couples because he was jealous of their conventional ability to have romantic relations. I know it sounds kind of weird, but some people do think that, and that's why he's targeting men and women. Other people, like even Gary Stewart, wrote this in his book, The Most Dangerous Animal of All, that the Zodiac was killing the men only to get them out of the way so that he could have access to the women. I tend to lean more toward that theory, because I'm not convinced that the Zodiac Killer was gay. I know that Paul Avery interviewed a forensic psychiatrist once who made the claim that he thought the Zodiac Killer was gay. However, that guy must know a lot more about this subject than I do, being a medical doctor and all, but I am definitely not convinced. And I think a lot of this comes from people who really wanted to crucify Arthur Lee Allen, who was a homosexual and the prime suspect, and still perhaps the prime suspect in the Zodiac Killer mystery, even though he was exonerated because of DNA. I will be 100% clear, I do not believe that Arthur Lee Allen was the Zodiac Killer. It doesn't mean to say that he wasn't an active participant in some capacity, but to have committed all of the Zodiac crimes, no, I don't think so, not at all. So, with the Zodiac Killer, you have someone who's targeting men and women, couples who are very frequently close to an automobile, also very near bodies of water. That's another thing that comes up in the Zodiac Killer mystery. But the Zodiac is much less personal. But here's another similarity. Not only did both the Zodiac and Jack the Ripper write in letters, after I did that episode on the murder of Longlis Stride, I was learning about some new things, and I learned that the Ripper had written in the Saucy Jackie postcard, and I was like, oh my gosh, that was actually the inspiration for this episode, to do the compare and contrast, because I was noticing that, well, that's exactly how the Zodiac Killer functioned, whether it's the Halloween card, the Eureka card, the Santa Claus card. I mean, the Halloween card is almost universally accepted as genuine Zodiac correspondence. The Eureka card and the Santa Claus card are not. But I personally do believe that the Eureka card is authentic. But we don't need to have a big discussion about that right now. The point is, they sent both letters and smaller things like cards and such. And I mean, that's just something that also begs the question, now, why would they do that? I mean, I think I've answered the question about why the Zodiac would do that. Well, he was learning about these things from Jack the Ripper. He wanted to not imitate the Ripper, but emulate from him. But with the Ripper crimes, though, I think it just adds to a different level of taunt. And the Zodiac would have done this too, where not only is someone writing in a letter, bragging about things, showing people, ah ha ha, I'm smarter than you, I did something heinous and you're too dumb to figure it out. But when you write in something like, whether it's the Halloween card or the Santa Claus card, whoever's behind those, it's also adding this silly, childish element to it, making a mockery of this, or just saying the Saucy Jackie postcard that the Ripper would have sent in, making a mockery of this. Not only will you never catch me, not only will you never figure out my identity, but also, I'm making fun of you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And Dr. Julie Armstrong has a lot to say about this in terms of serial killer psychology, and she's a a forensic psychologist and psychiatrist, and she says that serial killers do these things because they felt powerless when they were young. Someone abused them when they were at a very young age, so they want their victims to feel like they are powerless. They felt powerless when they were young, now they want someone else to feel that way. They felt terror when they were young, so now they want to terrorize somebody. They were hurt when they were younger, so now they want to hurt somebody. And serial killers will often go to the length of not only beating somebody up, not only injuring somebody, and definitely not only sending in these trolling correspondences, but it goes to the level of murder because it's a more intense reaction in the brain. It fuels the neurotransmitters associated with excitement, but also because it is something in which someone is rendered so defenseless that it brings them to their death. They cannot fight back anymore. If they are dead, they are completely defeated. And then you might ask yourself, well, what's a serial killer going to do if somebody has been completely defeated? Well, then the next step many of them resort to is cannibalism, like Jeffrey Dahmer would be perhaps the quintessential example of that in the USA, as well as any of the other cannibalistic serial killers out there. Okay, how about not cannibalism if someone's actually going to go through with eating the victim? How about mutilating their bodies? And the Ripper, though, I do believe, though, that when the half kidney was mailed in, I think that correspondence did say, I ate the other half. That's the desire for domination. And someone felt powerless when they were younger. Now they want to feel powerful when they were an adult. But they believe that they are so far broken that they will never achieve greatness in life. So instead, what they do is they commit these very heinous murders after dark. And it's their way of getting revenge on society for creating the people who abused them when they were little. And I mean, we could do, 3 or 4 hours just on that subject if you wanted to hear more about serial killer psychology. There, I will include a link to an episode that I did called the psychology of serial killers, available on this channel if you want to hear more about that, and that will be included here. The best way you can support this channel is just by listening. Of course, you can buy t-shirts or something like that, but most importantly, please just feel free to listen to some more of the content, whether it's the Zodiac hoax stuff, Joan Webster, or the psychology of serial killers. But the final thing that I would like to point out is something that I read on jacktheripper.org, and that was talking about how the Ripper operated mostly on nights, evenings, weekends, and holidays. The Zodiac Killer also operated on nights, evenings, weekends, and holidays. And I noticed that first in Robert Graysmith's writings. He pointed that one out. And the profiler, Sharon Hagan, has pointed out that if somebody is a serial killer who is operating at night, or also on weekends or holidays, they're probably someone who is a family-oriented person who knows their whereabouts. I mean, the family is going to know if this person is gone for 6 hours at a time. Also, this person most likely has stable employment, so they can't commit these crimes because they're at work during the day and then they're living this alter ego life of a serial killer by night. And even then, you could make the claim that it's a double life. Someone has a family. Someone has people who are going to expect them to be home at 5:30 for dinner at night or something. That's when my family ate dinner growing up, so that's why I said that. But I digress from that. The rebuttal to that is that nights, evenings, weekends, holidays, those are the times in which people are outside. Those are the times when other people are not at work. I mean, David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen, the first two Zodiac victims, well, they were at school during the day. Darlene Ferrin was a server. She had a job. Cecilia Shepard and Brian Hartnell were college students. As I said, Cecilia studied music. Brian was a pre-law major, not sociology, as Brian Hartnell very publicly corrected those transcripts. And with the Ripper victims, I mean, there's an expression, ladies of the night, or a term rather than expression. Well, this is the time when vulnerable people are outside, nights, evenings, weekends, and holidays. Does it mean anything that this person had stable employment or not? I don't really think so. I mean, it could go either way. I just want to throw that one out there as well. So in conclusion, is there anything else that you would like to add about about similarities and differences between Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac Killer. I'm the first to admit I'm not a full expert on either one of these things, but if you like anything that you heard in this episode, feel free to give this video a like and hit the subscribe button so you can follow along with some of these discussions about true crime, serial killers, and the Zodiac Killer. Every Monday is Zodiac Mondays. And you can listen and weigh in the comment section as well. Please share anything you have to say about either the Ripper or the Zodiac Killer, and I would invite you to listen one more time to The Psychology of Serial Killers. But also, you can just follow along with some of those playlists that I've put out there, and anybody can write the show at BlackBoxOnlineRadio at AOL.com, or you can contact me in the DMs on Instagram, BlackBoxNid88, and there's a link to the Facebook page in the description box here. Okay, I will see you on Instagram for the bonus podcast. Until next time.